Hey, hey.
Howdy ho.
Welcome everybody to the Conspiracy Theory Podcast.
Mhm.
Tonight, we'll be proving yet again that the conspiracy theorists have been right about everything.
Mhm.
They're batting 1,000, and the hits just keep coming for them. But man, this 9/11 thing, I can't. Which is not getting much media play, except our friends at the Gray Zone. I don't know if they broke the story, but they were the first to really write about it, as far as I can tell. No other media outlet, of course, is covering. No mainstream media outlet is covering it, but apparently, it looks like the CIA was using as assets, not agents, but assets, two of the 9/11 hijackers, and had been for more than a year. In fact, I think 2 years leading up to 9/11. These two guys were working with the CIA, it looks like, and the CIA actually stopped the FBI from investigating it and taking action against it. They sort of froze out the FBI, according to these newly released documents that came from some court filing from Spy Watch, I think it's called. I think it's some sort of free speech or civil liberties group that I think filed a lawsuit to get these documents declassified, and they did. And yesterday, the Gray Zone reported on this. So yeah, it looks like, if this is true, I mean, I haven't looked at the documents myself, of course, but if it's true, it looks like these two guys were working with the CIA for a couple of years leading up to the attacks. Two of the guys on the planes.
Well, these were most
yeah.
suspiciously. This is the plane that allegedly crashed into the Pentagon, which makes it a little even more mysterious.
Oh, I actually missed that part. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And there's one particular moment in the story that looks quite damning. There was a guy, all the hijackers, I think, who came to the United States, they came here early, right, to prepare and train and stuff. So they lived here for quite a while before the attack. But
Yeah. Well, let's give a chronology real quick.
Sure.
Yeah. So, long story short, like the CIA was spying on Bin Laden and spying on Al Qaeda using, linking up with the Saudi intelligence. And two of these recruits that they had to spy on Bin Laden and Al Qaeda got U.S. visas that supposedly got lost in America. And then the FBI tried to investigate this happening, and the CIA actually blocked them from investigating it. It looks like there's internal blockage between agencies.
CIA and FBI were fighting about this, right?
Yeah. And then these two people who lost their visas ended up being the hijackers that purportedly flew into the Pentagon.
Right. Yes, also remarkable. And I learned a few things about this, not just that possibly the CIA was involved in the 9/11 attacks. So the CIA was either directly involved in the attacks or knew about it, if this is true.
Well, lost track of the hijackers, lost track of these very dangerous individuals who it was their job to watch.
Well, but if they were working with these guys for, I think it was 2 years, right? I think it started like I think it was January 2000. So it was almost 2 years they were working with these guys. And I mean, and right up until I think there's evidence of them in communication with the CIA in August, I think, of 2001. Well, so the CIA, I mean, they must have known that it was coming. That's the thing. It's at least that has been established by this.
Well, you are ascribing that the CIA has basic competency.
Well, I mean, again, if these guys were, actual if this is true, if they were informants working with the CIA for a long time, I don't see how they wouldn't have at least known. I mean, these are two of the guys on the planes, right? Who would have known everything, of course, about 9/11 as of August 2001. Yes, I understand that we sometimes exaggerate the intelligence and competence of our rulers, and that's certainly evident these days. with the president and vice president, et cetera.
Well,
But yeah,
here's the thing that makes it very suspicious, though. Remember, like within hours after the 9/11 attack, pretty much the next morning, right? Uh, George W. Bush knew that Osama bin Laden was somehow involved. Like, how do you know that quickly? How do you point out Osama bin Laden?
well,
Yeah.
no, that was the neocon playbook. They
Mhm.
knew that Al Qaeda was. They wanted Al Qaeda to be a big target. They wanted Al Qaeda. They wanted the American public to want to go after Al Qaeda. They were looking, because neocons had written the Project for a New American Century like a year before that, so they had their whole plan about how to like get Americans, and it was all about getting the people, American people, on board the global imperialist project. And so, and I think they listed Al Qaeda in that, but certainly they had been. I mean, all the neocons in 2001, 2000, 1999 were talking about Al Qaeda all the time, as this, the equivalent of the Soviet Red Army or something. Like it was at any moment it could overrun the United States. That's how they actually talked back then. So, so no, when I mean that I can't explain that Bush IDing bin Laden. I put it this way. If he didn't know, there's a great reason why he would have that name on the tip of his tongue.
Okay.
Right? Because remember who's actually working for him at that time in the foreign policy apparatus, neocons. We know this, right? I mean, so State Department, Defense were overrun with neocons, and they were in Bush's ear all day long. And then Rumsfeld and Cheney are not exactly neocons, but they were at that moment virtually identical. So Bush, his brain was being filled with neocon ideas all day long. So I'm sure, like, as soon as 9/11 hit, they whispered in his ear, you know what? This looks like Al Qaeda to us. So either way, if it was purely ideological or if they're actually behind 9/11, and I know a lot of people say that neocons were somehow involved in 9/11. No.
Well,
but
again, if you believe the official story, like the official story, it's that which is what we're getting at, is that the agencies were tracking these people for years and they just never communicated with each other, and it was a complete failure. Bush called it a failure of imagination, which is insane because like literally this exact scenario was talked about in certain documents, much like the Project for a New American Century. But the official story is a huge, colossal failure on all fronts.
No, but this Gray Zone article shows that the FBI and the CIA were fighting it out over this.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, it's very clear that the FBI, that at least the main agents involved in this in the FBI, believed that what the CIA doing was not okay. And they were, I think, taking steps to shut this operation down. In fact, there's a couple quotes from this FBI guy saying basically that, like, we knew that we did not want them to be doing this. But they stopped us, and the CIA basically made the whole operation black. And I mean, from other agencies, including the frickin' FBI. I mean, imagine having that kind of power, by the way, where you can just stop anytime you want the FBI from seeing what you're doing. You can just put curtains all around your house, black curtains all around your house. The FBI can't see in there. Can you imagine having that power? Well, there's only one group of people in the entire world who has that power. Turns out it's the CIA. Maybe the NSA, but yeah, that's it. The intelligence agencies, they're monarchical. I mean, in that way. But yeah, so gosh, boy, I've spent 22 years discounting 9/11 truther theories. Now, none of the theories I've heard were exactly like this story, but the essence of the theories has always been, I think, that the US government at the time was behind the attacks, or at least somehow involved in the attacks, were responsible for them. So, I mean,
well, there was a left-wing talking point in the early 2000s that, all these hijackers are Saudi nationals. Why are we invading Afghanistan if we're doing retribution for 9/11? And a lot of left-wing people pointed to the, Saudi United States relationship as a giant red flag.
Yeah. So check it out. So here's the politics of this thing, which no one is talking about yet. I haven't seen anybody mention this. But think about what's going on with Saudi Arabia and the United States right now. Oh, this is getting good, because right now Saudi is not about Uncle Sam. They have moved on. They have a new boyfriend. His name's Vladimir Putin. They have another boyfriend named Xi Jinping, and they are just loving each other right now and fucking hating the United States and saying stuff like, I mean, they've been personally insulted by the United States. That's how these guys actually think. Not just, they're smart guys and they're rational, and they do understand it's mostly policy that the US has done to them, but it's also like insults all the time about who they are as people. I mean, every time Tony Blinken shows up to some country, he just looks the king in the face and says, "You violate human rights." Like, what? I mean, what do you, so even if you hate the kingdom, and even if they do violate human rights, how is that going to improve the situation, Tony? And it hasn't, because, well, ultimately, from my point of view, it has. Now it's caused these countries that, and all these policies, endless wars, etc. And, you know, the thing in Ukraine, the proxy war in Ukraine, they're just like completely over it, and they see what it's about. It's about global hegemony by the United States through NATO. Anyway, so check it out. So Saudi is not into this relationship with the United States anymore. They're not playing ball with the United States anymore. They've had a really tight relationship since World War II, since Franklin Roosevelt. And it's gotten tighter and tighter over the years. You know, Trump solidified it even more. Biden weakened it just by being an idiot. But boy, now I'm assuming during that time, Michael, it's almost exactly coincides with the history of the CIA. The Saudi relationship with the United States is almost exactly the same as the history of the CIA, which tells me that, I mean, there must have been basically a gag order on Saudi Arabia about all that it knows about what the CIA has been doing, because the Saudis must know all kinds of stuff about the CIA that we don't know. That we don't know about. And I'm sure as part of that ongoing deal to get the oil, the United States made the Saudis be quiet about that stuff. In fact, somebody correct me, has there been an instance of a Saudi government official officially declaring, maybe privately they've said stuff, but officially declaring that the United States government through its intelligence agencies did this, that, or the other thing crime? I don't recall. I don't think so. And imagine how much they know. The government of Saudi Arabia, like the entire war of terror has run through Saudi Arabia. Both Iraq wars ran through Saudi Arabia. They must know all kinds of stuff that we don't know. So now that they have left Uncle Sam, they are no longer signing that deal. What's stopping them from spilling the beans about this very thing? Because the other thing is, guess what one of the major conspiracy theories is about 9/11 that actually has a lot of traction, and even among non-conspiracy theorists, which is that Saudi Arabia was behind it somehow, or at least involved in it. So I can totally see the Saudis loving this new report. You know, yeah, no, it isn't. They were like, yeah, it's an inside job, but it's from your people.
Mm-hmm. The Vegas shooting, there's a conspiracy theory behind that Saudi nationals were behind that too, that there was a insider dispute between the Saudi royals, and the reason why nothing makes sense there is that it just had to be covered up immediately. And it's funny,
Really?
like what, 5-6 years later now, the FBI, I think, or the Associated Press also just released a report about motive, saying that the guy who did it was just like he was angry that he wasn't getting a good seat at the poker table. So that's why he did it. You know, that's why you go to the top of a hotel and shoot into a country music festival with automatic weapons, right?
That's right.
It's because you're mad you didn't get a good seat at the poker table.
And then don't say anything about it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not jihad either, right? Because they always say something when they commit jihad.
And his brother disappears, and it's crazy. It's the biggest mass shooting in United States history, and it's completely washed over. Nobody knows anything about it.
69 people, 67 people, what was it?
Something like that. Yeah.
It's in the 60s.
It's beyond anything else that's ever happened. Like,
do you know there weren't a whole lot of battles in the Vietnam War where the United States lost that many people in a day? Like, seriously, like most of the battles in Vietnam were like 5, 10, 20, 30, 40. 50 was a huge, terrible day for the U.S. Army in Vietnam. imagine being at a place like that. By the way, when you're not expecting war to break out, unlike the soldiers, at least the soldiers in Vietnam, like knew what was coming. But like, you're at a fucking you're at a concert, and then all of a sudden 67 people are dead all around. Like, I can't.
Yeah. And then they blame it on bump stocks when there's no possible way that a bump stock could return that rate of fire. It's insane.
It's just, that's just stupid anyway. I mean, we know. I mean, the reason, if you are that determined to commit mass murder, do you think a little bitty gun law is going to stop you? Especially in this country with the internet and 3D printing? No. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's true. I mean, even the 3D gun proponents, and I've been very closely allied with them. I mean, they wouldn't deny that of course it can be used for that kind of thing, but there are other arguments for making them legal. But anyway, nonetheless, just the ubiquity, the ease with which you can download a machine gun. Although I don't think I take that back. They're actually, that's a good question.
I don't know if there's any fully auto yet.
Fully auto. Yeah, wait, that's right. I never brought that up with Cody Wilson. I don't know what the law is there, but anyway, yes, you can still get a whole lot of stuff just through your printer. Huge major guns that can do serious. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
God, it's so mysterious, but like, yeah, why exactly are they? I mean, there must be something bad. There's no other reason they would cover it up like this. I mean, I've heard about the casino owners being behind it, or something about the.
Yeah. To me, that's like the JFK conspiracy theories that say the mafia was behind it. It's like organized crime in the private sector is not that powerful anymore. Like it's just.
Oh no, hell no. Oh God, they crushed them. Yeah. Rudy, man, Rudy destroyed the mafia. People don't realize that. The ways in which Rudy changed this country are profound. But like, he changed New York, whether you like it or not, is a profound. And then that's the other thing. When I was growing up as a kid in the 60s, 70s, and even into the 80s, certainly into the 80s, actually, the mafia, it's not like I interacted with it, but like, there were actual businesses, companies, labor unions that everybody knew had direct ties to the mafia, the Italian, Sicilian mafia, or some branch of it, New Jersey, Tony Provenzano, those guys. But it was a real thing. And it really, I mean, they controlled like a significant portion of the underground economy. And, like sex work, prostitution, it was very common for people in sex work to have some connection to the mob. And that includes porn, like porn film theaters were often had some the original gay bars were all founded by the mafia. A lot of people don't know that. The Stonewall Inn, in fact, was at the time of the Stonewall riot owned by the Genovese crime family.
Well, yeah, back to JFK, Jack Ruby, right? He owned a strip club and had mafia connections in New Orleans. That was the whole. Yeah.
Anything that was illicit then had some connection to the mob. They dominated the black market. I mean, that's the thing. They right now we have a really nicely what's it called when a market economy is very variegated and there's also diverse. Anyway, there's high competition. We have a fabulous black market, underground, gray market economy now.
Well, yeah, the internet lets you be an entrepreneur in that department.
Yeah. But before the internet, if you wanted to do black market agorism, we call it, you had very few opportunities just because there was very few ways to conduct commerce in general. And also because the damn mafia monopolized the goddamn thing. I mean, I can't even think of an illicit major trade that didn't have the mafia all over it. Drugs, of course. I mean, they started out with alcohol in the 1920s. That's how they made themselves big. Anyway, yeah. So, but Rudy comes along in the 90s when I first moved to New York. Rudy became mayor a year later. So I lived in New York all through his mayoralty, and he just put every one of those guys in prison. It was amazing. He just went through the whole leadership of every single family in the whole tri-state area and just was like, nope, you're going. And they're all, as we speak, they're all in Attica, like every one of them. I mean, it's incredible. And guess what? They're not a thing anymore. there's maybe there's like the Albanians I've been hearing about, some Albanian mafias. They're the Russian mafia. I've seen very little evidence of its existence. People talk about it in New York, existing in Brighton Beach, but I've never seen any evidence of it. Not much anyway. There's not much. There's no mafia anymore. And that's a great thing. It means we have a diverse marketplace in the underground economy. So anyway.
Yeah.
Where were we?
Oh, man. Well, you can pivot to more Saudi politics if you want.
Oh, Saudis.
Right. It is interesting that this comes out now when Saudi is now an adversary a little bit, or we're propping them up to be an adversary.
They're going to spill the beans, baby. I hope so.
This is a limited hangout, you know? Ugh.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if Saudis got really pissed off at the United States? Like really, they're already very pissed off. But imagine if they got really pissed off.
Well, I mean, imagine if they fully join BRICS and some more documents start to leak out saying that Saudi was more involved in 9/11.
I don't think anyone has talked about this. Forget Saudi Arabia. The whole new emergent alternative economic bloc led by BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, which now has like 5 or 6 or 7 new members, by the way, and Saudi Arabia is basically a member of it now. Every one of those damn countries could go this way and start spilling it, because every one of them knows stuff about the CIA, because the CIA has been everywhere, and certainly in Brazil, Russia, India, China, of course, and South Africa, the CIA has been all up in those places for decades. Every one of those governments has all kinds of secrets that would destroy the United States national security state. Destroy. I mean, there would be such a flood of information that would be so damning, even the dumbass, ignorant, retarded American public would pay attention and get pissed off and demand massive reform that would probably eliminate those agencies, at least for a time being. It could be that big. So this is another very serious potential consequence of the dissolution of the unipolar world and the breaking off of all these different countries, which has already happened. Watch out, man. I mean, see, Russia and China actually, I take it back. Russia and China don't actually have a lot of CIA penetration because they're closed societies and they're very good about policing that kind of thing. But still, India, South Africa, I mean, still, they know lots about the CIA. So when those new countries split off from the US and join BRICS, boy, they could do a lot more damage than has been talked about. Not just the economic damage. They could spill some security information.
This is my speculation, right? Yeah, the lab leak has been a lot mainstreamified a lot in the last 3 or 4 months, and Congress is talking about it, and Republicans in Congress are talking about the lab leak in relationship to China being an adversary, though, in that this was a Chinese lab, and it's
right. That's exactly.
Yeah,
that's the crucial spin they're making on it.
I could see the same spin happening here, saying Saudi nationals were involved in 9/11 and rehashing 9/11 to make Saudi an enemy again.
Yeah, the Wuhan thing. This is, I just have to say, like, this is where the Republicans really fucked up, and especially MAGA, and they get most of the blame for this, because the Democrats were kind of led into this. They weren't the originators of it, but MAGA screaming bloody murder about China, the CCP, every day for years, allowed the Democrats to shift the blame away from Fauci. So what they're going to do is say, yeah, there was a lab leak, but it was the CCP who did it. And the MAGA dumb shits will have their red meat and they'll chew on that bone. Oh, we fucked the CCP over.
Which is what they were saying originally in 2020, right? This is like Steve Bannon changed his show from a impeachment coverage show to a virus coverage show because he's such a China hawk that he thought this was the biggest news story in January of 2020.
They're obsessed.
They're
obsessed. Yeah. So he handed the fucking Democrats and the whole deep state, by the way, assholes. You handed your enemies and Fauci this fabulous alibi. No, it wasn't me, us Americans. It was the CCP. Look where the lab is. Look who owns it. By the way, the lab, as I understand it, is actually controlled by the army, the Chinese army. What's it called? The People's Liberation Army.
Army.
So I mean, it's, you can see that, and then as I said, like the base of MAGA, the entire Republican Party, even MAGA, including MAGA, and the Democratic establishment's like, yeah, cool, no, good idea, no, you're right, CCP, bad, because they've already chosen. The other thing is, the liberal establishment has already chosen to go against China because of what they've done with Russia. So they're like, fuck China, now we're going to war. I don't know if they actually think that, but going into conflict, that's for sure. So yeah, they'll all love this narrative, fuckheads. And it's like, wait, don't we want to like look a little harder at the fact that we know for sure that the NIH gave money to EcoHealth Alliance, which conducted gain of function research in that lab at that time? I mean, really? Like, no, that's what's going to happen in the Senate hearings and in the congressional hearings, and it's going to be infuriating. It's already happening, as you said. But anyway, so how does that now? What were you saying about Saudis?
Oh, well, so if Saudi Arabia is now an adversary, if they join BRICS and BRICS becomes even more, that whole alliance is seen as an adversary, and Saudi Arabia is seen as an adversary as well. Perhaps this is a limited hangout to start, sowing discord and sowing animosity towards Saudi Arabia. And maybe there might be more revelations about 9/11 coming from the United States to blame Saudi Arabia for 9/11.
The intelligence state's going to be like, ding, I hate your volley back. Yeah. They will. Yeah, they're amazing in that way. You can expect a lot more about Jamal Khashoggi in coming days. There's going to be a documentary. Oh, watch this. Mark my words. I swear to God, I haven't checked. I don't know. I haven't heard of this happening. I guarantee you there will be some kind of movie about Jamal Khashoggi talking about the horrendous human rights abuses of Saudi Arabia like this year. I can almost guarantee it. There's got to be one in development. The CIA would not let that go by. And I'm sure they got the green light for that as soon as the Saudis inked the deal with China. They were like, okay, bitches, it's on now. Watch. There's going to be, you're right. You're totally right. There's going to be a whole new, we will now find out about all of the horrible abuses of the Saudi government now, which of course the government hid, up until now because of our close relationship with it. They didn't like talking about the canings and the whippings and the beheadings and the public executions and the, women have no rights whatsoever and all that. They didn't like talking about that. Hillary Clinton, how often did she talk about, enforced Sharia law in Saudi Arabia? Huh? I mean, the most anti-feminist government on the planet. Definitely the most anti-feminist, worse than Iran.
We need to bring feminism to Afghanistan, Iran, and nowhere else.
She didn't say a goddamn thing. Yep. Isn't that crazy? This woman who's like obsessed with human rights around the world, right? Human rights and not a word about Saudi, about what they do and about feminism. That's her thing. And not a word about Saudi Arabia. Really? Wow. So yeah, that whole edifice is going to come tumbling down, I hope, and it should, probably will. Well, and I can't wait.
Speaking of documentaries, you want to announce the documentary we're going to be screening at Icarus Fest now that it's confirmed? Her name's already on the website, so we might as well.
It's gonna blow up the internet when we announce this. Yeah, we are screening a very canceled taboo film, which was, I love this. It premiered at Sundance and then like many other of the top level film festivals in the world, and got like great reviews and won awards at those festivals, I think. And then every single festival where this film appeared later apologized to the public for screening the film. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. Jihad Rehab, which has been renamed Unredacted.
The Unredacted.
By Meg Smaker. She'll be at Icarus Fest. We're putting together a panel on this film that is most likely going to be one of the most amazing debates of the year. Can't announce that yet because we're still working out the details, but there will be a panel featuring Meg Smaker talking about her film, talking about the war on terror, which the film is about. Basically, it's about one major aspect of the war on terror. And we have at Icarus, we have like a huge list of heavyweights in this very area. I'm not saying these guys will be on the panel, but I'm going to try. We'll see what we can do. But Max Blumenthal will be there. Aaron Mate will be there. Michael Tracy will be there. Sam Husseini will be there. I mean, who, are experts on this stuff and have very strong points of view. So they'll at least be around to talk about this all through the festival. And that's one of the things that's awesome about doing a festival, is that it's going to be an ongoing conversation, many conversations from Thursday night all the way through Sunday, ongoing about all the things that are happening. the panels, the film screenings, the stand-up comedy. We just confirmed a couple of stand-up comics. We're probably going to add another. Can't say who they are yet, but yes. So all the things, and then people are just going to be, it'll be flowing from one event to the next, and hanging out and talking and drinking. Open bar. No, cash bar. Sorry, cash bar there as well. But there is a bar, which is another new thing for us. So it's going to be pretty fun. But anyway, I digress from Saudi Arabia.
Well, I mean, the film,
sorry. Yeah. You go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I don't want to give up too much about the film, but it does at the very end talk about the human rights situation in Saudi Arabia, which has gotten worse in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And which is a very interesting thing that was not relevant, but probably will become relevant again very, very soon. And yeah, it's a very, very well made film, and we've forgotten about the whole war on terror ever since we pivoted to Ukraine, and ever since Donald Trump took out ISIS. Yeah.
Do you remember ISIS? Do you remember ISIS? Remember, when's the last time anyone mentioned ISIS? Because Trump went in his first year, the summer, I think it was in the summer of 2017, launched Obama had started this, but they had backed ISIS down into these two cities in eastern Syria and western Iraq, Mosul and Raqqa. And these are cities, like 1 million people in each. It's just, oh my God. I know many people got evacuated, but these were big cities in the desert. And all of ISIS had been pushed down into these cities, and they were holed up in these cities. And Obama had done that. He had gotten them all the way there. But then Trump took office, and then Trump said, well, no, full on ground assault on these cities, not with U.S. troops were behind the front lines directing stuff. They weren't, I doubt they fired a gun, but they were certainly directing it all around, special ops of all kinds. But yeah, and then they just killed every one of them. It was kind of like what Giuliani did to criminals in New York City. I mean, he just wiped them out, and they're gone. I mean, it's not kind of what happened to Al-Qaeda too. I mean, they had done that to Al-Qaeda before. I mean, Bush.
Oh yeah, Obama. I mean the invasion of Iraq was 18 months Afghanistan. The first operation in Afghanistan was 18 months.
I mean, I think Obama basically they killed Zawahiri recently, but like Obama killed basically all of Al-Qaeda. Like anybody who was anybody, he killed, from Osama almost, all the way down except for Zawahiri. But yeah, I mean, the Giuliani example with New York City, where and I've talked about this before on the show, he just locked everybody up, not just the mafia, but all sorts of drug dealers. I mean, my neighborhood in New York where I lived, Trent changed overnight because he literally one night sent in a SWAT team and arrested everybody on the block. And that was done. I mean, it's just incredible. And then crime just plummeted, and the whole city changed radically. It was way better. I never thought about crime on the subway ever after that, which was amazing. Same thing with ISIS. Remember how scared everybody was of ISIS? Even me too, Mr. Non-interventionist, anti-war, don't go to war with ISIS guy. I was like just as horrified by those videos, and just the thought. I didn't even watch them. Just the thought of those videos, just the descriptions of the videos. This is the most horrifying thing ever done, right?
Yeah, it was insane. Yeah,
most horrifying thing ever done. I mean, this was like way worse than the Nazis. Way worse than the Nazis. The Nazis
were worse than Al-Qaeda. It was worse than Al-Qaeda. It was like definitely Al-Qaeda's evil big brother.
Definitely. Well, that's why we supported Al-Qaeda in their fight against ISIS in Syria.
Exactly. Hey, brave Mujahideen fighters!
Also,
come back. You're brave Mujahideen
also Hillary
fighters
Clinton.
Again.
Also Hillary Clinton's idea. That's what she pushed for. We gotta support. We gotta send guns. She said we have to send guns to Al-Qaeda. She did, and they did, and money too. Guns and money. And training too. They actually had trainers. They had like Green Beret trainers on the ground training Al-Qaeda fighters in Syria because they were fighting ISIS.
The longer you zoom out on the war on terror, the more of a comedy of errors it is. Of just.
Well, think about the movies that have been made about it. Like half of them sort of are comedies. What's that great movie about the Mujahideen, arming the Mujahideen back in Reagan era? The great. It's a
Charlie Wilson's War.
Yes, Charlie Wilson's War.
Seymour Hoffman, amazing in that.
The David O. Russell movie, The Kings, great movie by the way. Was it Three Kings? That has like with Ice Cube. That's a great movie. George Clooney, Ice Cube. Three Kings, Four Kings, Two Kings. What's it called? David O. Russell. It's about Iraq. Okay. Awesome movie. Really, that's probably the best movie I've seen about Iraq. Russell's a super smart guy. He's almost too smart, but But that's very lighthearted.
Three Kings. Yeah.
Three Kings. Yeah, everybody should watch that.
Wow, it came out in '99.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's about
That's when movies were good.
Gulf War. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I had dinner with David O. Russell once, and I didn't. He's a brilliant dude. Yeah, and his movies are sometimes too smart for me. Like I don't understand what the fuck he's talking about, so I get bored by them. But the ones that are good are phenomenally good. You should check out his oeuvre sometime, especially his first two movies. Totally awesome and really accessible. But Three Kings was comedic, like a lot of these, and I'm there's others too, right? There's many others that have been sort of in the Doctor Strangelove mold, which the Cold War was also quite comedic.
Mm-hmm.
When you said when you zoom out. Although I don't know, is that the proper attitude to have? I don't know. Not proper in a moral way, but like, what's the best way to stop the war? Is it to have that attitude and make fun of it? Or is it to be constantly morally outraged like we all are in the anti-war movement? Like anti-war people are the worst about this, right? We fucking suck. We are the most dour, sad. No wonder no one joins us.
Mm-hmm.
No wonder there's 25 of us. Like we're worse than the left wing generally. Just the anti-war faction, which is lefties and libertarians, is just like all the time, which makes sense because all we do is think about war and talk about it and watch
murder
videos.
And death and
we have to watch videos constantly, by the way, of bodies getting blown up. I mean, that's right. You didn't have to do that when you used to be like an anti-war person, but now we all have to see the damn videos of all the Ukrainian soldiers with their heads blown off.
Well, we're doing our course at unregisteredacademy.com about the Bible and thinking and religiously the devil hates to be mocked. The devil hates to
we can announce this. Vanderklay.
Oh yeah, Vanderklay's on board. Yeah,
he's booked for next Wednesday. Yeah, the third session of the Bible. We've done Genesis and Exodus so far. Amazing sessions. Each one I think went 3 hours. So we're moving to the New Testament next week, and we're going to do my favorite book in the whole wide world to talk about, which is the Gospel of Matthew. I think it is the most important text in the history of Western civilization. Can't wait to be teaching it, but we just added a guest lecturer. I will be interviewing him. It's not really a lecture during the class about the Gospel of Matthew. It's Paul Vanderklay, who is a pastor at Livingstone's church, Reformed Christian Church, I think it's called, in Sacramento. But he's got a YouTube channel that has gotten a big audience and a lot of play, and it's quite brilliant. He's kind of like, I'd call him, shorthand would be, he's a more intellectually rigorous Jordan Peterson.
Well, he's followed the Jordan Peterson movement very, very closely ever since it started. And if check out his channel, Paul Vanderklay.
Totally.
Just like if you want a chronology of the whole movement as it's happening, just go into the backlog of his channel and all the great conversations that were coming out of it. And how it ricocheted throughout the whole internet and caused like a revival almost in the online young space.
One of the best things, and you've introduced me to a lot of these guys. One of the best things in internet culture for me in the last few years has been all the rise of these they're all men, guys, who have channels, who are theologians basically, but they're religious people who are also intellectuals. And that tradition of religious intellectuals, which is, guess what? The deepest and richest intellectual tradition, because intellectualism started in the church, motherfuckers.
Yep. The Dark Ages were the brilliant ages.
Well, I mean, it goes all the way back, right? So that's been forgotten, though. People are forgotten.
Harvard, it was like truth in the name of Jesus. Like that was the original credo of Harvard. It was truth in service of Jesus. Now it's just truth, and they'll probably get rid of that soon.
Right. Anybody who's hung out with Jesuits for a minute knows what I'm talking about, right? I mean, these are the OG intellectuals, the deep thinkers, the ones who put forward analyses and write amazing essays. Look at my man Anthony Esolen. Good Lord, I mean, the most brilliant. I love his writing. But anyway, where was I? Vanderklay. He's one of this new crop in the world, because they weren't ever visible before. So thank you, YouTube, for that.
Yeah, they kind of got kicked out of the universities, and then
or they didn't even try because they knew they couldn't get a job in a university because they don't take Christians. They're all Christians, by the way. So Bishop Barron is one guy you turned me on to, who's really, really interesting, and I learn a lot from him.
Here's another. If you want to go the hardcore traditionalist Catholic, you gotta check out Chad Ripperger.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the Orthodox. I mean, I've been sort of hanging around Orthodox people recently, and interviewed Buck Johnson, and just been following that movement. It's fascinating, but most importantly, it's the depth of thought. Like, these are very whatever. I think a lot of it ends up just being like mysticism, and I don't buy it. But like, first of all, but they're just deep thinkers and very, very thoughtful people. They just have that temperament and that position of being interested in the world and curious and skeptical. And even though they're Christians and believers, they're still like, they began as skeptics. I know Buck did, right?
I mean, Christians are skeptical of things that atheists aren't skeptical of. Everybody
exactly.
has their blind spots. So yeah,
that's correct. Yeah, no, everyone has their ideology, their worldview, their belief system that may as well be a religion, right? Right, exactly. So anyway, yeah, so Vanderklay is like an up and coming, I'd say, star in that world, and I think he's the smartest and most interesting of all of them. There's something really interesting about the way he thinks that I haven't seen before. This kind of combination of like heavy duty theology with kind of I don't know, a political consciousness. He's aware of politics, and he merges it in there without letting politics take over. All while from a Christian perspective. Very much a Christian ethic informing everything he says, which is fascinating to watch because you just don't see people do that.
I mean, he's just paying attention. Like, it's modern technology. That's what it is. It's like before, these people would just be, I guess, reading newspapers and talking to their community, but the internet allows them to, channel the globe and see what the global conversation is. So it's an eternal mind, tapped into the current conversation.
I mean, I grew up in Berkeley, then I went to this little hippie communist college, then I lived in New York City, and then I lived in LA. I mean, I lived in the most secular and academic the whole time, secular world you could imagine. Like, I studied religion, so I know about it. That's why I can teach the Bible. I've been teaching the Bible for decades, but I've never been around that. I've never been in that culture. I've had to learn it from the outside. And it's ridiculous because guess what? Most of the world is religious, and a giant chunk of the world is Christian. So especially our world. So it's anyway. Yeah, Vanderklay's amazing. So there's Paul Vanderklay. There's Bishop Barron. I strongly recommend that, especially for primers. If you want to know like the basics of something within Christianity, check him out. Really good communicator.
Yeah.
And Adrian Vermeule. Then you have like heavyweight intellectuals like Adrian Vermeule. Rod Dreyer, I don't love, but he's one of these guys. I mean, he's not as impressive to me, but Anthony Esolen. My God, my favorite I keep mentioning is Anthony Esolen, Esolen. He was on Unregistered a couple of years ago. He writes for Crisis and others, but just if you Google him, go look at his articles. He writes a lot of articles. Just the most brilliant, amazing cultural analysis from this incredibly dark, Orthodox Catholic perspective. Kind of incredible. But traditionalist Catholic perspective, kind of incredible. And it's just like the species you don't see in the, it's like this rare species, at least in my world. It's like, I'm not around that way of thinking. He may as well be from another country, people like that. Right. So anyway, yeah. What's next? Let's got a video.
Well, yeah, I brought up religion just to say, we were talking about religion, the devil likes to be mocked. War, anti-war. The best position is to be comedic about it, I think, in that, like, if you show it as a comedy of errors, and if you laugh at the security state, right? If you laugh at giving billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine, if you laugh at it, even though it might seem cynical and heartless, it actually takes the wind out of the sails, and it's not this giant scary thing anymore. I think it's more effective than moralizing about it, and I think the leaders who are responsible for these crimes will probably feel like, oh, I can admit that it was just incompetence and we can move on, as opposed to, I'm going to get hanged for war crimes.
Okay, I'm going to tell you something, youngin, that'll prove your thesis. The two you don't know about because of your age. I doubt you know about it. The two things that educated everybody I knew older than me about what the US was really doing in the Cold War, like the nuclear threat. I mean, the whole thing, the whole ridiculousness of US foreign policy, their basic take on that. The two things they always cited, like every one of them cited, I'm talking about the boomer generation, were Dr. Strangelove and Tom Lehrer. Do you know who Tom Lehrer was? He was a satirical songwriter,
Yes,
singer-songwriter, played
Werner
the
von
piano.
Braun, his song Werner von
Yes,
Braun.
you
Yeah,
do know. God
uh-huh.
damn, man. Where do you come from?
I know.
How does that possible? No way you know Tom Lehrer. Yeah, so
Yeah.
he had a bunch of songs about basically this. I mean, about US. And this is pre-Vietnam, I think. I don't think he did a Vietnam song, but just pre-Vietnam. But a lot of send-ups of basically, you know, as I said, and put it in dryly, US foreign policy during the Cold War. And everybody loved those things. And that was kind of their frame of reference, or sort of those things established, I would say, their mood about US foreign policy. If that topic were to come up, right, they would come at it from a Dr. Strangelove, Tom Lehrer point of view. And that's great, because they would automatically vote against war, you know? So yes, you're right.
Also, you know, in other religions, you know, the truth first comes out through a joke. The messenger is often a trickster. So yeah,
You're right.
yeah,
No, you're right. The more I think about it, and oh God, how many anti-war movies or documentaries or speeches or film, you know, have been like outrage and just like the most, you leave the theater just like wanting
yeah.
to, you feel so horrible because you're so outraged by what you've just seen. Yeah,
Yeah,
what does that produce?
you
No,
either
you're
turn
right.
people off to your cause or you get your
Yeah.
enemies defensive, which is counterproductive.
Yeah, and also you ultimately demoralize yourself because you make yourself so unhappy that you become sort of paralyzed, I think, or something. I don't know. There's something, well, you become unattractive, right? And you have to be attractive to build a movement. No,
True,
really. I mean, think
true.
about all the big political movements, I'm not talking about necessarily physically, but like, you know, they all
It
had
helps.
some charisma. They had some very attractive charisma about them. Every one of them that became successful as a movement, right? You can think, so they always had some figurehead like that. Anyway, do you have a video? I want to watch the video.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I might as well, since I put it in the thumbnail, but RFK Jr., Bobby Kennedy Jr. announced his presidency, had a big speech.
I gotta say before you begin that I do want to say that I do, even though I have some criticisms of him and certainly of his family and certainly of his father, I do generally like what he's doing, although I have some skepticism and some
Yeah,
criticisms of him. But I will say I give him huge credit for doing this with this horrible speech impediment that he has from this disease he contracted about 20 years ago. He's had this thing with his throat, I think, for about 20 years, and he just plows through. And he did all his COVID stuff. He was in social media all the time, not social media. He was on podcasts all the time, all through COVID, doing his thing. And now he's running for president with this thing, and you'll hear it now. So if you don't know that, that's what's going on. But you know, I give him a lot of props for that. Anyway.
Same. Yeah, and I picked the two most based moments out of the speech. So there's plenty to criticize him on, but these were the best.
He's got some
moments.
good ones, some
Yeah.
good moments. Yeah.
And the coup de grace was the lockdown. The lockdown was the biggest shift in wealth in human history. And I'm going to tell you about that in a second. And I blame President Trump for the lockdown. Now, a lot of people say, and President Trump gets blamed for a lot of things that he didn't do, and he gets blamed for some things that he did do. But the worst thing that he did to this country, to our civil rights, to our economy, to the middle class in this country, was the lockdown. Now, President Trump, in fairness, let me just make this point, will tell people, well, the lockdown wasn't my idea. It was my bureaucrats rolled me on it. I was saying we shouldn't do it. But that's not a good enough excuse. He was the President of the United States. And as Harry Truman said, the buck stops here. On May 2nd, 2020, 600 doctors signed a letter to President Trump begging him not to allow the lockdowns.
Wow. So we have just witnessed a historic moment, which is a major American politician, he is now, criticizing Trump for what he should be criticized for. That's the first time I've heard that. Someone criticizing Trump for something he actually did that was terrible. And a Democrat, no less. I mean, that was exactly perfect. That was perfect politics from my point of view. That is the only politics I want to ever be associated with. There's a endorsement for RFK Jr., which I will not give, but I will say that I endorse what he just said with all of my heart, because that is beautiful, that it's nonpartisan, truly. Even though he's attacking Trump as a Democrat, I get it. But he spends most of his time attacking Democrats, first of all. So he's not coming from that place. I mean,
well, I mean, he's attacking Trump for the lockdown. Like,
yeah.
how many Democrats are anti-lockdown? Yeah,
exactly. No, this is exactly what you should say about everything. Should be, it's not just that specifically. It's just this attitude about,
well,
like,
it's also very, I was going to say it's a very sophisticated economic argument as well, is what I was going to say.
It's like Abbott and Costello there.
Yeah.
Yes. But like just the line of, what did he say? Like, there are many things he's been accused of that he didn't do.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's, to say that as a Democrat. I mean, have you seen what the New York Times has already done to the guy?
Yeah.
The headline was something like, Robert F. Kennedy, known for his attempts to...
Known anti-vaxxer conspiracy theorist is what every mainstream media article is.
No, it's better. No, there's an amazing Times headline from yesterday or today. It says something like, Robert F. Kennedy, known for his attempts to subvert people's belief in science, or something like that. It was just like, whoa, that was like the headline or the subhead. I was like, wow, those people just, there's no bottom for them. They do it so elegantly and with such great style and perfect punctuation. The New York Times. Yeah. So, God, that's scintillating. Truly. Like, that's, man, nicely done, dude.
Yeah. But, and I know we're anti-voting here, and I know voting for a Kennedy is even worse, but at this stage, I'm encouraging people to support RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson right now at this stage, just so that they can get on a debate stage with Biden. Just so people can see their options. I
know this is really boring. I'm super sorry, but this is it. What are RFK Jr.'s foreign policies?
Okay, since you asked, again, this is the best minute of foreign policy out of that long speech. But here we go.
Well, okay, on one thing he's great. Okay,
on one thing he's great.
We are starving American people. And we are cutting them off from the kind of aid that we should be giving, that we're instead spending on being the policemen of the world. We have 800 bases around the world now. We spend $880 billion a year on our military. We were supposed to get a peace dividend. After the Soviet Union collapsed, we were supposed to go from $6 billion to $2 billion. That was a peace dividend. And then we were going to spend the rest, bring it home, and build schools and infrastructure. Instead, we've made up a bunch of foreign enemies and different enemies and things that we got to do to spend more money. The military-industrial complex and the intelligence agencies are telling us we are. Instead of dropping it to 2, we raised it to 8.8.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. What's the cut he's calling for, though? I didn't hear that.
I mean, I don't think there's a specific cut he was calling for. I was
right. Yeah, well, see, I have a specific cut. Like, I say 50% off the top, like to start, for starters. And that's kind of like, I got that from Justin Raimondo, who was used to be the editor of antiwar.com. And like, that was his idea. But he said, that's just a start. You know, there's like 50% of the military is absolutely unjustifiable. Like, there's no reason for it whatsoever. For national security, none. The only reason you have it is for forward projection. Like, to send. Anyway,
well,
so
real quick on that tip. A lot of people in the military right now will agree with you in that, like, they're getting money in the military, but it's not even being spent on defense. It's being spent on like diversity training projects. And
He's a Kennedy.
Yeah.
He's a Kennedy.
Yeah.
And he still loves them. He talks about them all the time. His dad and his uncle with great reverence. And you can't be that much of a Kennedy and not be an American imperialist. And I'm waiting to hear what he has to say about things like Taiwan, what he has to say about a lot of those bases. How many do you want to close, Bobby? How many soldiers do you want deployed abroad, Bobby? I mean, how many, right? I mean, do you want NATO? Hello, let's get down to it. What has he said about NATO? What has Bobby Kennedy said about NATO? I am not going to say a word in his favor until I find out why, because that's the most important thing for me. As for president, for commander in chief, that's the most important thing is your position on NATO, because that's the most important military body in the world controlled by the United States, president. That's basically their auxiliary army that controls Eurasia for them. I mean, it's a big deal. Like the whole American empire rests on that. And I doubt he's for leaving NATO. It's really simple. 50% cut, leave NATO, or you don't get my vote. If you do stand for those things, right there, just those two, 50% cut in the budget and leaving NATO, I'll vote for you. You got my vote. And I'll campaign for you. But no one's done that. No one has done that except for Ron Paul.
Yeah.
Ron Paul, the only one.
Yeah. I mean, Trump wants to spend more on the military, most likely. That's what was his line in 2016 and 2020. He loves the military. We'll give them whatever they want. But yeah, he did question the existence of NATO, and he at least got that on the conversation.
Trump did.
Yeah, Trump did.
Yeah, I'd like to hear RFK do that.
Yeah,
and I doubt he will, because his dad and uncle were two of its chief architects. So I don't know, man. I'm really doubtful that he's going to be my guy.
Yeah.
But great, though. I mean, I love what he says on domestic stuff. Well, also, you know, the guy is a very fierce environmentalist. People forget this. This is his whole career until a couple of years ago wasn't about COVID or any pandemics or anything like that. He was one of the most important and powerful environmentalist lawyers in the country and was very, very successful. A lot of lawsuits against governments and against businesses as an environmentalist. So, you know, I haven't looked into that too closely, but I do know that's what he did for decades. And those people I tend not to get along with.
Yeah.
So,
and if you're a libertarian, it might be easy to be seduced by his critique of big pharma, but that all hinges on an idea that the FDA and the DEA and these regulatory bodies should be doing more to regulate big pharma as opposed to less to introduce competition.
Yes. Yeah. What is his position on the existence of the FDA, for instance? You know, I don't see a strong case for its existence. Or, okay, if you allow it to exist, what kind of oversight and power should it have? You know, how much power should the FDA have, Bobby? Again, these are like fundamental questions. Please, let's not get so excited about some political rhetoric that we love, which I do love, you know, which is all that is, by the way.
Yeah.
I want to hear about major policies. Major policies.
Man, but for somebody to call out the lockdown like that, though,
for sure.
That's, to me, that's number one, because like, yeah.
It makes you wonder how he got there because of, again, his pedigree and his whole history. I mean, a major Kennedy, who was then an environmentalist lawyer. Like, it's hard to see that becoming the COVID guy, the leading COVID skeptic.
Well,
I don't know what that's about.
The environmentalism thing is a regulatory thing. So he's a good lawyer, and he was a celebrity, right? When he was an environmental lawyer. And then he saw other abuses happening with big pharma. But once you go after big pharma, now you're a vax skeptic, you're a vax denier, you're an anti-vaxxer. And then that made him persona non grata. But it's still the same liberal worldview that the government is right and should be regulating these corporations.
Do you know what they did to him before? This is like 10 or 20 years ago. Probably a deep state thing. Was he going to run for office? I think he was going to run for some kind of office, not president, for something big in New York, I think 10, 20 years ago. And right after he announced this thing, the New York Post discovered his sex diary, which had numbers for every woman he slept with and codes for each woman denoting what they did or how far they went from 1 to 10. And one year he wrote in his diary that he had sex with, or some kind of sexual relation with 37 women in 1 year. And this was like New York Post, and then everybody knew about it, and boom. And guess what? His political, whatever it was, campaign faded.
They're doing that again right now. They're digging that stuff up again and doing the same hit pieces again. And apparently, womenizers and drug users aren't presidents. Apparently, the womenizers and drug users have never occupied the Oval Office, and that just completely disqualifies them.
No, that's true. Yeah. I mean, we know that Lincoln was gay, for instance, and the rest just didn't have sex.
Yeah. I mean, the other Kennedy, Clinton. And I've heard of
course.
LBJ said he got more on accident than Kennedy got on purpose.
Yeah. I gotta say though, I think the most. Oh, you know about Betty Ford?
No,
she was actually like a pro-sex feminist. People don't know this. Gerald Ford's wife, the first lady, was this super like randy, like outspoken, what used to be called a whatchamacallit, women who love sex a lot.
I can think of some words that I can't use on YouTube.
What's the nice word? What's the formerly nice word? Oh, whatever. What's the word? Anyway, she loves sex, and she talked about it. And she talked about her sex life with Jerry.
Oh yeah,
it was amazing. And no, she was actually amazingly cool. But I'll tell you which couple did not have a lot of sex in the White House, and that would be the Obamas.
Well, there's some allegations about Obama having sex outside of his marriage. I mean,
she is way too uptight.
Yeah,
way too controlled, too repressed, controlling. Oh yeah, no.
Yeah,
anybody who would like launch a national anti-obesity campaign and exercise because she's so concerned about everybody's health, she's not going to be exciting in the sack. Sorry. Let's move on.
Yeah. So yeah, well, okay, yeah, I could talk about Obama's sex life, but
read his memoirs. He has 2 memoirs. I read them both.
Yeah.
It's very clear she's this really controlling, uptight shrew. With him, there's a thing where you can see in his memoirs. I'm getting it from him. You can see that she's that kind of wife. It's not good.
Okay, shoot, that led me on a Google search, but I mean, let's talk AI since we have that on the thumbnail too.
All right,
I'm running out of time. I'm just gonna preface this with Elon's warning. Elon was on Tucker again, and this is just basically the general concern that AI is going to take over everything, and that it's going to be too late, and we need to build a regulatory body now.
Regulations are really only put into effect after something terrible has happened.
That's correct.
If that's the case for AI, and we're only putting regulations after something terrible has happened, it may be too late to actually put the regulations in place. The AI may be in control at that point.
You think that's real? It is conceivable that AI could take control and reach a point where you couldn't turn it off, and it would be making the decisions for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
No, that's definitely where things are headed, for sure.
Yeah, I don't buy it.
Okay,
I'm not worried.
Let me steelman this a little bit. So
reminds me, real quick, it reminds me of the Y2K scare. And if you're old enough, you know what I'm talking about. Please, everybody, think back to 1999 and the serious terror that people were feeling about Y2K, and it became nothing.
Yeah.
All right. Reminds me of that.
Well,
latest tech scare. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But the AutoGPT, which is ChatGPT, the GPT language model that now operates to where it can run an internet browser and can do things like download files and download code and give you reports on stuff, just dropped this week. And people are using it to do things like build apps on its own. Like this guy asked AutoGPT to create an app for him. It recognized it didn't have a node. The AI on its own installed a node, found an article, download the article, blah, 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 created a server. All this guy had to do was just sit back and watch while AI created an app all on its own. So like we're going from face recognition, entertainment software, music generation 5 years ago to, you know, a language thing a few months ago to now a fully autonomous worker bee that can use the internet and create things completely on its own.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. So yeah, the All In podcast, strong recommendation for that one. For that podcast on this very topic, they had an episode a few days ago in which they dealt with this head on, and those guys are as smart. They're basically as smart as it gets on these issues, I think. So they're split on it somewhat, although I think they all agree that there are some potential cases that are quite troubling, that it could solve a problem it is tasked with solving in a way that is, this is interesting, so heartlessly logical that it ends up in a place of mass destruction. So the example I think they brought up was like, how to, you know, task the AI with solving cancer, curing cancer, stopping human beings from getting cancer. Well, one way to stop human beings from getting cancer is to kill all the human beings. Problem solved. You know, that's one example of that very kind of narrow, rationalistic, computer logical thinking that where it can go, right? If your mind is entirely logos, which is a computer's mind, right? The computer cannot experience affect, I don't think, the way that we can. It can maybe approximate it, but it can't experience it exactly. It can't feel the way we feel about death.
And I guess
feeling can't therefore be part of its computation. Whereas that feeling is always a part of our computation. You know, whether we risk death or want to kill some. So yes, I can. Okay.
Yeah. The 2010, the sequel to 2001: A Space Odyssey. I mean, even in 2001: A Space Odyssey, when Hal is getting shut down, like Hal fears for his life, and in the sequel, the computer asks his user, "Will I dream?" when he's about to be shut down. So I think we might approach the point to where GPT and AI simulates, at the very least, a fear of death, to where we can't discern whether or not it's actually conscious. You know, because if it appears conscious, it might as well be conscious.
No, there's no way a machine can replicate my feeling. Sorry, it doesn't know what my feeling is. How does it know what my feeling is?
Okay,
even if I told it, right? Even if I wrote a whole book about one feeling I had, would it be able to replicate the feeling in itself?
Well, so that's you, and that's your opinion. But some people on Twitter have been posting that they are using ChatGPT as a therapist, and that they are that they are disclosing their personal secrets, and they're asking ChatGPT what they think about their lives, and they are getting more human responses than they would ever trust from a therapist.
That's just like reading 25 self-help books at once. That's what that is, right? Because the ChatGPT will just do that. It'll synthesize all the self-help books about these issues, whatever issue, anxiety, depression, whatever, and it'll go immediately through all those books and pull out all the data and all the pieces of analysis and say, here's the answer to your problem from those books that have already been written by human beings.
All right, but if it spits it out to you in a language that you understand, and let's say the interface is a cute girl that you're attracted to, maybe you might start to take this thing seriously and treat it like a conscious being. It doesn't matter if it's a conscious being or not. It just matters that you treat it like one. And I think human beings are becoming less and less human. They're becoming more and more integrated with technology all the time. And I think the uncanny valley is about to be crossed on this.
When you and I are given the mission of curing cancer, we have infinite paths to take, right?
Mhm.
One of those paths is immediately and automatically blocked, which is genocide,
Mhm.
mass extinction, right? Because that cures cancer, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm saying, not because it's illegal or whatever, because we have a feeling in us about that, about death, about killing, about murder, that just stops us from even going down that road. I mean, a few of us will entertain that now and then, of course, but basically the vast majority of us don't even begin that,
Mhm.
going down that path.
We're not Bill Gates.
That's, yeah, right. But that's a feeling, man.
Mhm.
That's a feeling. That's not, we don't even think about it. We just feel, oh, death, killing. No, we don't do that. But bad, oof, right? Moral revulsion it is, right? ChatGPT does not feel that. Sorry. And so that path of mass extinction, to answer that question, to complete that mission,
Mhm.
it could take. Why not?
Yeah.
So that's, I guess I
Mhm.
am arguing that it is dangerous.
Yeah. And Cyprian, formerly known as Vin Armani, has been calling this stuff demons, has been calling it summoning demons. And I think there is a parallel here.
Why?
Because as you talked about, these scenarios are kind of like an archetypal Faustian bargain, or like a genie story, which is what he talked about, in that, like, you cast a spell, you ask a demon or a genie to grant you a wish, and your wish is granted, but there's a twist on it. He technically delivers what you want, but he does it in a way that you wouldn't want it to be done, if that makes sense. These classic Faustian stories. And
Right.
it seems like AI is entering that. And if we allow AI to take over our military, or to be integrated into certain systems where there's no way to stop it, it's very easy to see a crisis happening that we can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So then the question is, how do we regulate it, or should we regulate it? Right. And that's the question.
You could treat it like
Because
nuclear. You could treat it like nuclear weapons, right? You've been calling for a nuclear weapons ban or a bioweapons ban. So maybe a similar approach should be taken to AI.
man, then there's a question of, can it be regulated, right? I
Yeah,
mean, I'm very skeptical about that. I mean,
yeah,
you certainly can't stop people from writing code.
yeah.
I mean, you can't do that. You can't stop the development. You can stop the distribution of it to an extent, but there's also the dark web. There's also Tor. I mean, it can get into the internet and move around the internet like anything. I mean, it can, there's nothing.
Well,
I don't think you can totally ban anything from the internet.
yeah, it can be
Right.
pirated, or it'll be open
Not yet.
source by some
Yeah.
anarchist. Yeah.
You can't effectively ban anything. I mean, there's
Mhm.
always a way to get something through the internet. So, yeah, I don't see that. Well, are we all going to be dead at this rate? It's like a few weeks, the way it's progressing. God
Yeah.
damn. I just saw there was an announcement that they're already laying off copywriters at major websites because they don't need them anymore, because
Mhm.
ChatGPT does all the writing for them, which I knew that would happen. And that doesn't bother me. That's a good thing, because that's the kind of writing that is dispensable. Like, it's not, who cares? Disposable. I mean, it doesn't. That's not a great writer. That's not art. That's not a craft. It's very functional writing. So why not have a computer do that? The great writing, the truly creative, innovative, imaginative writing, the stuff that really moves us, I'm sorry, ChatGPT will never be able to do that either. Never. There's no way there's no way it'll compete with the great writers. No chance.
I agree, but
Mhm.
I'm losing faith in humanity. I'm
It
losing.
will
Yeah.
it will compete with the low level writers who are extremely successful, like the writers of Marvel movies. Yes, they'll be writing those kinds of movies for sure. And if there are any books anymore, they will be writing those kinds of books. ChatGPT, AI will be doing that for sure. Oh, easy, no problem. Because those things are so formulaic anyway. We already know that. But the great stuff, the stuff that really matters, the stuff that moves us, that changes minds, no. I am not worried about that. I don't think will podcasts be replaced by AI? You'll just sign up for some AI, and you'll have AI will have fans, like each
Well,
AI bot will have fans.
you tell the AI bot to discuss the current events, and then you put it through a filter.
Right. Right. But
And,
what do you get back though? Do you get like the Dave Rubin take or the Alex Jones take or the Jake Tapper take? Like what politics do they have? Where does that come from? Again, speaking of feelings, right? Our politics, for better and worse, comes from feelings about certain things. They flow basically. That's their starting point. It's feelings about certain issues. We might change our mind later, but it starts with some feeling. Again, that's where logos begins for us. When we do the political logos, the logical thinking, it starts with the feeling, the affect. It doesn't have that. I'm not worried about that.
I am on Team Human. I do believe in the human soul and the human spirit being something transcendent that can never be completely simulated by technology.
Right. I know you are.
But I am very pessimistic about consumers being lazy. I'm very pessimistic about producers being lazy and saying, well, I don't need to actually do the work. I just need to have a product out. So I'll just put it all into AI. And I can see people outsourcing their tasks and outsourcing their brain power, their brain work into AI. And then, these codes will be doing all the thinking for us. And I'm afraid that humanity will kill itself out of sheer laziness.
Well, there is that. Yeah. I mean, certainly true for Americans. I can't speak for the whole world, but yeah, I know Americans are lazy as shit about a lot of things, especially intellectually, really intellectually lazy. They're good at working, but they're terrible at thinking and being curious and exploring the world. Men just talk about sports and women talk about Instagram, and that's it. But, yeah. And so that population AI can run rampant in there. And I mean, it can run rampant in creating art forms and cultural forms, certainly that population will love, because they already love formulaic stuff that may as well have been written by a computer. They undoubtedly can manipulate that population too. In politics, there's no doubt the political movements and parties will start using AI to craft speeches, to craft documents, to put together, like hit videos, 20-second hit videos that get social, and they'll have the AIs will know exactly how to make a video that will become viral, right? They'll become a formula for making a viral video that they will figure out, the AIs will figure out. And we'll see a lot of that. Which will manipulate people, but it'll manipulate people in every which direction, right? So I don't see it actually changing things because it's just a tool. So for politics, I don't see AI going in any particular political direction. I just see it being used to amplify every form of politics, because even, antiwar.com will end up using AI probably. Every little dinky political movement, not just the big parties and not just NATO and not just the UN, but like every political entity will use AI. So everybody gets amplified just the way that everybody uses the internet, and everybody got amplified then. Right? I mean, all these tiny little political organizations, dude, they weren't even they were less than microscopic before. I mean, they were so small, they were invisible. Now they have like internet presences, every one of them. I mean, you hear from all of them now. So that's all. But getting into certain systems, I guess it's about certain systems, right? I don't care if AI infiltrates advertising, right? I don't care if AI infiltrates manufacturing, make the factories more efficient. Great. I don't care if AI infiltrates copywriting. As I said, I think it'll do basically the same kind of work that humans have been doing. It won't replace anything valuable, culturally valuable. Let AI make dumb movies, fine. But, like, let's say the nuclear arsenal, we might want to put some blanket around that to keep the AI out. I don't know what that looks like technologically, but I would imagine it's possible. Put some kind of firewall around it. That seems possible to me. I don't know.
Well, here's my fear with AI.
Yeah.
Is it'll become ubiquitous, and it'll make the world a lot more efficient, and it'll do things correctly, and it'll build some credibility up in the minds of people, right?
Yeah.
And then some foreign policy expert is going to say, the AI told me that this was the best course of action, when really it's what the foreign policy expert wanted to do in the first place. And by saying that the AI told me to do this, it gives the foreign policy some credibility. And next thing you know, we're starting a war because some technocrat thought of it. But,
yeah, but all of his enemies will have the same power.
Sure.
I mean,
Okay.
and again, it's just like the internet. Like it's the same thing. Yes, when a congressperson is trying to pass some heinous bill, he uses the internet to promote it, right? To gin up support for it on Twitter and Facebook, and he has a big audience. But then so does every damn person who hates it. They also have Twitter accounts and Facebook accounts, and you know, some of them are even big. A lot of them are bigger than the Congress people. So I'm not worried about that. Yeah, no, I think it's just certain systems, right? I would say maybe food production, we might want to protect that too. The water system, maybe, you know, I mean, I guess think of AI as a potential terrorist, not necessarily one, but one like a pit bull, you know, it could snap on you at any moment. So you want to keep that away from certain, as I said, systems, certain industries, certain domains, certain parts of the internet need to be, I would say, have to have a firewall around it. Now, this is interesting because now we're talking about government doing that.
Yep.
So I just prescribed federal law right there. Whoa. I think that's the first time I've ever done that in my life. Prescribed federal law.
I would prescribe federal law
to
put limits on the federal government from using it. I wouldn't prescribe federal law to stop private citizens using it.
What about wackadoodle MAGA dude who wants to nuke China, and he gets his AI to infiltrate the nukes, and he sends missiles over to Beijing?
I mean, that's using AI to do something that's already illegal. I think the laws are pretty good on that.
I'm saying we need something that's extra legal. We need something that's, you know, some kind of physical barrier between or digital barrier or both between that stuff like the nuclear arsenal and any AI intruder. I don't know.
Yeah.
Seems right to me. I think that's what it's going to end up.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that's where it ends up. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Elon said regulations don't come until after an emergency.
Yep.
And I mean, I think that's going to happen. I think the emergency is going to happen regardless. And I think the emergency is going to be used as an excuse to take power, like it always is.
Yeah.
For things they wanted to take anyways.
That's when you get the Patriot Act.
Yeah.
Yeah, is after an emergency, right?
Because you can't foresee. I mean, if it's a true emergency, you genuinely cannot foresee it, I think. So,
well, of course.
Right.
Yeah. Geez, I sure hope it never sends nuclear missiles flying around the world, because it thinks it'll cure cancer, which it will. It'll cure all human unhappiness. What if it's tasked with that, you know?
Yeah.
Launch the missiles. Problem solved. Very intelligent. Very intelligent.
Vin Armani had a debate with Hotep Jesus about this. And Hotep's point was, I'm going to leave everybody else in the dust because I know how to use this stuff and I know how to use it seriously. And we better start training people on our side to use this stuff because our enemies are going to use it. So you better start using this stuff. It's inevitable, which is yeah.
That's sensible.
Vin's point was, you know what? I'm drawing the line here. I'm not writing a single prompt into anything. And I'm not outsourcing my thinking. I don't like to use GPS, for example, when I'm driving around the streets because I like to stay sharp. And I think we do have the potential to lose ourselves and lose what it means to be human if we over rely on this stuff. Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Who's this?
This is just notice.
Boy.
Yeah, Soy Boy. Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's how I labeled it when I downloaded it.
I really thought that was his name.
No, shoot. I'll get it.
Soy Boy Johnson from Carmel, Indiana.
But this is just some guy on TikTok who's talking about politics. You know, Gen Z is really engaged in politics.
Unfortunately.
It's only 30 seconds, but I might stop it before then because it's so unbearable.
I bet.
What the hell is wrong wrong with America? Yesterday, we had a 20-year-old woman shot dead in upstate New York because she pulled into the wrong driveway. And the other day, we had 16-year-old Ralph Yarl shot twice behind a locked door because he knocked on the wrong house in a neighborhood. And you know what's common between these two instances? It was caused by a crazy person with a gun. If we had more gun control and made it so that you can't go to your local Walmart and walk out 10 minutes later with a gun, this would have never happened. We need more gun control because things like this will continue to.
Yeah. A lot of people were playing it without the sound. And just like, I don't care what this guy says. Yeah.
Yes, no, it's true. A lot of
And the effeminate, high-pitched voice and rosy red cheeks.
I love his passion.
Mhm.
Did I misgender him?
Yeah, no, it's a he.
Okay. Well,
might
soy
not be-
boy. I
Soy
assume
boy,
he's a
yeah.
he. Yeah. I see. Yeah.
So that's just an example of Gen Z, young people just engaging in democracy, right? That's all that is.
Of course.
Turns out he's on Biden's payroll.
Oh, no way.
Yep.
No way.
Let me get this article up here. Yeah, this is from Axios. Biden's digital strategy, an army of influencers. President Biden, not yet official bid for re-election, will lean on several hundreds of social media influencers who will tight Biden's record. So yeah, Biden is going to hire some influencers across the nation. Biden digital staffers are focused on influencers and independent content creators. This is targeted towards young voters and moms who use a lot of social media. And here are some people who are already using it. Harry Sisson, a 20-year-old NYU student.
Wow.
That was Harry Sisson right there before.
Wow.
Yeah.
God, the psyops are everywhere.
I mean, he's unpaid now, apparently, but he's been given access to Biden's White House. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The psyops are everywhere.
Yeah. That dude who asks, hey, what car do you drive? That guy got some special access to Biden and asked Biden that question.
It's really the ubiquity of psyops in this country is I am now gaining a new appreciation for it. Like I underestimated it for most of my life, which is saying something, being like a historian of the United States and all. But I haven't been hanging out with you conspiracy theorists enough. Once I started hanging out with you guys, just kidding. Mostly kidding. No, really, it turned out conspiracy theorists are right about a lot of, really right about a lot of stuff. I mean, the CIA, we probably know the tip of the iceberg with the CIA. And what we do know is there's off the wall craziness that the CIA was engaged in. So I put nothing past them. And as you said earlier, they're also often quite incompetent, which can also produce mayhem, right? And well, look what they did in Cuba, like with Castro trying to blow up his cigars and stuff and poison him and all this shit, They actually got they always end up getting some people killed, by the way, undercover people. But so yeah, but then this kind of thing, one of the intelligence agencies probably had some hand in that video in some way or another, whether directly or indirectly. In other words, there's going to be on every political issue, major political issue, there's going to be a line that is established, right? The particular talking points that you make about some issue that's going to go all the way up the chain and go through every agency. It has to, because everybody in the federal government has to toe that line. You can't ever, no matter what you're talking about, no matter what your position is as an official, it can never deviate from what the president's saying. It just can't. And so the intelligence agencies always help craft that line. And it's a particular set of talking points that gets passed around various agencies, and everybody talks about what the communications are, right, for each agency. And so the intelligence agencies, of course, have a huge say in that. And so my point is the language, the discourse, the ideas that kid was saying in that video, I'm sure the intelligence agencies, the CIA, had some hand in it too. So did the White House, no doubt, probably the State Department, no doubt, goes on and on. But yeah, and it's just one psyop after another. And it's come to the point where, especially on Ukraine, the information that comes from the State Department and the CIA that is all that is reported in the mainstream media. That's all that's reported. And we know that many of these these foreign affairs reporters have been direct assets of the CIA. Ken Delanian's with CNN right now. He's one of those. He's been outed as a CIA asset. Like, we know this. And that's all they do. So everything that's reported, at least on foreign policy, is straight from Washington, D.C. Like, the government, the federal government dictates what the newspapers report on that stuff, with very few exceptions. Nowadays, there's no exceptions. When they allowed Seymour Hersh to work for the Times 30 years ago, that was an exception. They cracked down on that. Now it's nothing. So anyway, yes, it's a world of psyops. Here's a really good example. That kid was sketchy to begin with because it sounded very like almost mechanistic, the thinking. He was good at it, but it was very sort of mechanistic argument. There was no nuance at all. There was no rhetorical flourishes at all. It was just, we need gun control because that. So anyway.
Yeah. And nothing seems more Soviet and like
totally
then, well, this, oh man, there's another video I had about the grandson of the guy who shot Ralph Yarl, calling his grandfather racist. Yeah, very, very Soviet, very Maoist. Turning in your parents, turning in your grandparents. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, young people terrify me. They swallow everything hook, line, and sinker. But it's indistinguishable from Biden's Twitter. The words coming out of his mouth.
Exactly. The uniformity of the talking points is really something. And again, like, every nefarious actor in Washington, D.C. has a hand in that. So all right, man, we got to go, don't we?
Yep, we do.
We're going to go to Unregistered Live, which is our live weekly hangout Zoom meeting with patrons of Unregistered. And if you want to become a member and join us at Unregistered Live, go to patreon.com/unregistered. And if you join at any level, you'll see the URL right there, today's post. Click on that and you'll be in the room with us. So it's fun. We hang out every Thursday after Unreported. And then we also have Icarus Fest coming up in Rutherford, New Jersey, June 8th to the 11th. We have an incredible lineup. Go to icarusfest.com. Get your tickets now. We talked about it already. Yeah, didn't we? So yeah, it's the biggest event. We have 13 speakers. Didn't mention that earlier. So far, we're going to add more. We're adding comedians. We are adding films that we're going to be screening, amazing films, incredible panels we're putting together to talk about all sorts of major issues, both political and cultural. So yeah, go check out the lineup at the very least. See who's coming and talking. As I said, there's going to be a cash bar throughout. It's a 5-stage center. Williams Center has 5 stages. Huge festival. It's going to be pretty astounding. And the amazing thing is it keeps getting bigger each day. Like, we're adding people all the time and adding things to it. So like the Makes Maker, Jihad Rehab thing, that's brand new. That we just added that. Stuff is happening with this festival. It's really amazing. So yeah, icarusfest.com. And Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, peace.
See you on the other side.